Hey, can everyone hear me? All right, awesome. I'm Joe Porambo, Customer Success Engineer at VMware.
And I'm Saqeb Akhter. I'm a systems engineer on the VeloCloud side of VMware.
And this is Simplifying Operations by Advancing Your Network with VMware SD-WAN. Everyone can speed read, right? All right, so the agenda for the next 25 minutes, we're going to discuss why SD-WAN has become such a popular solution. We're going to briefly go over components and architecture, get into profile configuration, which will lead us to a zero-touch provisioning demo, and then we'll go through some API use cases, a REST API demo, and a Python demo. So why SD-WAN? It's no mystery that WAN environments are increasing in complexity due to more and more network-enabled devices in the modern workplace. We have intensive CLI provisioning. It can take weeks to roll out a new branch in your WAN environment. We have expensive private links, expensive routing equipment, not to mention underutilized backup links and redundancy equipment. And we also have the growing adoption of SaaS and infrastructure as a service. As of today, over 50% of enterprise traffic is now SaaS or infrastructure as a service. So with our solution, VMware SD-WAN by VeloCloud, we're able to offer a simplified WAN management with our centralized user interface. We have fast and easy branch rollouts with services like zero-touch deployment and one-click service insertion. We have guaranteed application performance with our application prioritization, our link remediation, and aggregation. And we provide a direct and secure on-ramp to the cloud by use of our cloud gateways. Getting more into the components that I briefly discussed. So we have the VMware SD-WAN edge. This serves as your logical endpoint to the multipath tunnels or overlay that we'll be constructing. These are what you'll deploy in your data center and branch locations, and then they'll tunnel together. They can encompass any transport, even LTE. So if you have an existing legacy WAN network and MPLS, our edges will make use of that and tunnel through it. There's a variety of deployment options, which we'll get into a little later. Then our orchestrator, this is our centralized user interface. This is multi-tenant and cloud-hosted. It's your one-stop shop for configuration, monitoring, troubleshooting. Everything is done through the orchestrator, essentially. It's no CLI. Everything is click to provision for simplicity and speed. And then we have our VMware SD-WAN gateways. These are also multi-tenant. These are network-as-a-service devices that are located strategically around the globe near popular SaaS points of presence, how we're able to offer that direct and secure gateway to applications. And now looking at how all these components lie together, here's our enterprise OTT model. OTT for over the top. This is meant as an augmentation to an existing, King Kong's coming out or something, but anyway, this is meant as a augmentation to existing WAN network. So you would have your MPLS existing network that your edges, which you deploy in your branches and data center, are also going to utilize, as well as utilizing tunneling through public internet. Here we can see our dynamic multipath optimization service. It's conducting the per packet monitoring and steering based on whatever business policy you assign through the orchestrator. You can also see that the edges are dynamically tunneling to each other with a dynamic edge-to-edge VPN, so there's no need, if you don't require it, to backhaul to a hub or data center. Your branches can just dynamically tunnel to each other. We have our gateways over here extending our overlay to SaaS applications. Another function of the gateway would, maybe you have a data center where you don't want an open internet device for security reasons to be deployed in. You can spin up a gateway and have it form an IPsec tunnel with a Juniper or Cisco box in your data center and extend the overlay to that data center that way. Not pictured here, we also have the option to use a gateway to extend to a cloud security service, such as Zscaler or Palo Alto, to kind of get more cloud security. And yet our orchestrator up here is hosted in the cloud, so it's not in your network. We also offer an on-prem model where everything is deployed within a secure network, including the orchestrator. So getting into deployment, there's 3 deployment methods for the edge. You won't be in charge in most cases of deploying your orchestrator and gateways because those are multi-tenant cloud hosted. Those aren't something you have to worry about. You can buy your edge on AWS or Azure. You can install a virtual edge on ESXi or KVM, or you can have an edge shipped to you on pre-installed software and have a physical edge box that's very easy to just plug directly into your network. No matter how you deploy your edge, you're going to configure it at the same place, and that, of course, is your orchestrator. Once again, this is a no CLI device. Everything is click to provision. There's a lot of useful analytics, like you can see where your edges are located on this map. You can see edge status, link status. You can run a whole bunch of troubleshooting commands from the orchestrator, like trace route. It's pretty powerful. The orchestrator employs a profile-based configuration model, and a profile. Well, here's an edge profile, right? And so you can, if you have a bunch of similar branch locations, you can configure one profile and assign that to each branch location, and then make any minor adjustments through the device setting page. So it really speeds up rollout. Most likely, you'll be configuring this profile before you even have your physical edge or have spun up your virtual edge. And then when you're ready to activate that edge, the edge will automatically pull its profile from the orchestrator. And we call this process zero-touch provisioning, ZTP. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. And we actually have a demo to show you how it's done.
So who's here is familiar with RTBD? No one? Real-time band delivery? So I just clicked a single command and call that band over to do some music for us, but no. But serious question though. Are you guys, anyone you guys doing SD-WAN today or thinking about it? Are you guys more on the networking side or on the API side or the orchestration side? Both? Networking? Okay. So our ZTP is pretty straightforward. It's literally 3 steps, and we're going to have a demo, but literally it's you click create, you assign a profile, which Joe just talked about, and you send an email, and the person who receives the email just has to click that link. So I'll go through a demo here. It's a recorded demo, so and I'll walk through what's actually happening. So this user is logging into the orchestrator, and once you're logged in, you can see all your edges, what edges are deployed, what the status of those edges are. But you can also create a new edge. So right now he's going in, he clicked new edge, he's typing in the name of the branch. In this case, it's SFO, so for San Francisco. And he's assigning the edge model. You don't have to specifically assign a specific edge serial number, just the model type. So in this case, he did 5x0, and he gave it a branch profile as well. And like Joe said, once you assign a profile, it's going to inherit all the configurations for that profile. So any QoS policies, any firewall rules, everything would be inherited from that profile. If that profile is designed to use Zscaler, it'll also inherit that. Over here, he clicked on the send email activation link. The activation email has 3 main steps. One is power on your edge. Step 2 is plug in the edge to your laptop. And the third step is click that link that gets sent out in that email. After that, so he sent the email out. He's going to go to his email. He's going to open that email up. He's going to read the instructions. The instructions also say that by default, the VeloCloud Edge, the physical box, is also advertising an SSID by default, the factory settings. So he's going to connect to that SSID. So instead of having to physically connect to that edge, he's connecting to the SSID instead. Once he's connected to that SSID, using our default password, which is mentioned in the email, he clicks that activation link, and once he clicks that, it actually goes to the edge and activates, and it's pulling down the configuration from that profile. And at the same time, it's actually also upgrading the edge as well. So this specific profile also said, hey, you should be actually at 3.2.2 versus 2.1 or 2.5. And that's pretty much how activation works on our boxes. So once it's activated, you can actually go in, and at that time, it's starting to now pull that edge for metrics. So how much traffic is going through this edge, what's the SLAs on the links that are connected, so the ISPs or the MPLS links, what's the status of those links. And so as soon as you activate it, it's starting to report all these statistics back up to the orchestrator. And that's kind of what he's walking through here now. So you can see here, you can see it's connected, the tunnel is established, the link is up, so he's got 2 green lights there. You can see how much traffic is actually flowing through it real time right now. You can also see on the right-hand side how much latency, jitter, and packet loss will also be detected as well. So that's how the activation works, but behind the scenes, there's also a lot of API calls that's being made. So you'll notice 2 things here. Browsers are a client to our API, so right now in that demo we were using Chrome. It's using that API to interact with the VeloCloud orchestrator. That same API is open to all users to also integrate with. So if you want to integrate your CRM, your alarming system, your provisioning systems, you can use that same API to do all those same tasks as well. So some of the use cases here, I just mentioned some of them, but there are 3 common scenarios you want to use the API for. There's monitoring, reporting, and configuration, right? So for monitoring, collecting all the events that are coming from the edge. Is BGP down? Is my link flapping? Is how much throughput is, or how much jitter or latency? Collecting all that information and reporting on it and alarming on it. That's a really popular use case that we've seen a lot of providers and enterprises look at. Reporting. So a lot of times, a customer will say, hey, on the whole, how much traffic is my site in San Francisco using, and what applications is it being used for? In the last 30 days, was most of my traffic to Office 365, or was it to Netflix, right? So having that kind of reporting capability, you can extract all that information from the database via the APIs and report on it, generate PDF files, automatically email them out. And then finally, one of the other common tasks is configuration automation. So let's say you want to hook into your CRM system. When you're configuring a new customer or a new edge, to automatically tie that back into the orchestrator and turn up a new edge automatically. So all of this is possible with the API. Like I said, the API is using exactly what Chrome does today to interact with the VCO or the orchestrator. So today there's about 300 different API methods available, and it's broken up into really resources and actions. So common resources that you would use would be configuration to configure an edge, edge to gather edge statistics or get edge configuration, events to pull events. So those would be the resource types, and then the actions you can take on those are really what the REST actions are. So create, update, delete, and so on. And all of this is actually documented on code.vmware.com. So if you go there and you click API Explorer, you'll see VeloCloud there as an option, our orchestrator. You click that, and you'll see all of it. All the API calls are documented there, along with code samples and Postman collections, which I'll talk about right now as well. Like I mentioned before, Chrome is using the API. So one of the cool tricks that a lot of people developing against the API use is really using what's called Chrome Inspector. So it lets you look at what API calls Chrome is actually doing to the orchestrator. So it lets you not only see the API calls over there on the right-hand side, but also right-click and say, hey, copy this URL call, and you can literally copy-paste that to the command line and run that same API call and change parameters right on the fly. Literally, it takes about 2 seconds to do that. Using that same curl command, you can actually change it to a Postman command. So over here, are you guys familiar with Postman? So some of you, okay, a little bit. So Postman's a really popular tool used for REST API development. So if you're testing against APIs or developing against them and you want to test something out before you roll it out to production, it's a quick, dirty way to actually do that testing and then take it into production. So over here, what we're saying is, hey, in the previous screen, you saw that we can see the API call being made on Chrome. You can copy that, take it to Chrome, take it to Postman, and change these parameters around. So over here, we're saying get enterprise events, or get enterprise edges, sorry. So what that call is saying is, hey, for this customer, show me all the edges, right? So you'll basically have a list of edges get returned to you with their activation date, what configuration they have, and so on. So this is another demo. We're using Postman. So this is actually using a Postman collection that we've posted publicly available on code.vmware.com. So in this demo, you can see here there's a bunch of different what we call Postman scripts that are bundled and available for download. It lets you basically log in. So we have the login API script for that, and then we have other scripts available as well, such as in this one we're doing so we're doing get events. So get events really is get me all the events for a specific enterprise. So let's say you have 100 sites. It'll get you the log events for all 100 of those edges in a given time frame. So over here we can see that it's a list of events, what time they occurred. So it'll be events like, is the link up, is the link down, was the BGP neighbor there, is the BGP neighbor not there, and so on. And then what we're doing now is really, we're going to go and use the API now to provision an edge as well. So there's a couple of things happening here. I'm going to actually pause it for a second here. So let me go back. So in that video, what happened is to provision an edge, you need two things. If you remember when we activated that edge, we had to assign it a name, and you had to assign it a profile, right? And to do that, you need to do a couple of things. One is you need to figure out what profile you want to assign to that edge, right? And you need to give it a name. The name can be any arbitrary string, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to that portion of the video and just start it from there, and just walk through this here. So right now, what we're doing is we got a list of the users on here. So now we're able to see the enterprise ID number. So you also need to know the enterprise. So let's say you're a service provider. You have multiple customers. So you need to know which edge this customer is going to belong to. And then you need to know which profile this customer is going to use. So that's what this second ID here is over here, which is ID 14771. So this is one way to provision it. Obviously, this is not a scalable way to provision any edge, because this is really just to demonstrate how the API works. But over here, we can see we're passing in the enterprise ID, and we're also passing in the profile ID over here. And that's all that's needed to actually create an edge, right? So we're going to go ahead and click enter here, and now the edge has been created. The response from the orchestrator was the activation key. And now if you go back into the orchestrator, we'll actually see that edge has been created, but it's in a non-activated state. So if you go back in here, refresh the screen, we'll see there's an unactivated edge at the bottom there that was created via the API. And I already talked about this earlier, but again, if you go to code.vmware.com, all these samples that we're showing are also available there to download. Most of them are Python scripts, as well as that Postman collection I showed as well. And then finally, this is a slightly more complicated demo. In this demo, what we're really doing is we're saying, hey, we want to provision multiple edges, but instead of manually typing in that information, like the enterprise ID and so on, we want to feed that information from a spreadsheet or a CSV file, right? So let's say you have 100 edges you want to deploy, and you want to go out and instead of having to manually deploy each one, you fill out a CSV file, and you fill in all the parameters that CSV file has, like IP address for the LAN side, which profile to use, what edge name it should be, what the CIDR address is, and so on, right? So in this scenario, we're actually just doing 6, but you can expand on this as a CSV file. The script itself is going to iterate through the CSV file and individually configure each of these 6 edges. So this is the actual code for it, and again, it's available on code.vmware.com, so you can see all the actual methods that are used. But basically, if you scroll down, the main portion of the code itself is really just this part here. The top part's just our standard API calls. But this is what's reading that in this case, it was a Google Sheets file, but it could be a CSV file. It could be just a JSON text file. And this part of that code will really log into Google. It'll get that URL for the Google Sheets. It'll read that file in, and it'll use all the parameters for that file. So what I showed earlier, the IP addresses, the names, and so on, and use that as values for what it passes to the orchestrator. So in this case, it's going to run this code 6 times because there were 6 different fields in that CSV file, and create an edge for each of those. So I'm going to forward this a little bit because I want to save some time for questions. So the code itself, so we walked through the code. I'm not going to walk through it all the way. You can always download it from code.vmware.com. So what we're going to do now is actually run that script. And we'll see it does a couple of things. You'll see it looping about 6 times. So it's logging into the VCO, and now it's processing each of those individual edge parameters for each of the edges in that CSV file, and it's provisioned 6 different edges with 6 different activation keys for each of those edges. If you go back into the VCO now, we'll see if you go to refresh this page, There's 6 different edges in the unactivated state, each with different names and each with different LAN IP addresses that was defined in that CSV file. So obviously CSV files, I don't think it's something you would use on a day-to-day basis to provision, but think about tying this back into what I mentioned earlier is a CRM system where your sales guys go out, they create a new edge, and automatically that CRM system can talk to your VCO, pre-provision what needs to get pre-provisioned as much as you can, and then you can go forward from there. So that's pretty much it in terms of the demo. So a couple of key takeaways. So there's a lot of built-in automation that the orchestrator provides out of the box, such as profiling, automated tunnel turnups, automated, building tunnels to Azure Virtual WAN, Zscaler, and so on. On top of that, we have a really, really robust API that lets you extend that further and way beyond what we offer on the VCO to let you really do anything you need to do in terms of automation. Again, code.vmware.com is where you can find all these samples and start playing around in labs. And then finally, there are other sessions happening for VeloCloud as well. If you guys, I think some of you guys mentioned you're from the networking side. There's a couple of sessions tomorrow on 5G as well as Verni integration with VeloCloud as well. So Verni vRealize Network Insights, and I believe the books are now in as well. I heard a rumor that the books are in. So we will have a book signing tomorrow. You'll be able to get one of our new books, which is One-on-One with SD-WAN, the what, why, and how. There was a bit of a customs thing. They got stuck in customs, so I actually had another slide for that, but I took it out. I didn't put it back in. But the books are back. I think the signing is at 5:30 tomorrow. If not, there you come. It should be in the app as well, the time and the location. So definitely come pick up a free copy of the book as well. And I think we have a few minutes for questions. Any questions?
About the zero-touch provisioning, with other vendors, the box has to have first internet connectivity or connectivity to some provisioning service. Did I understand correctly that with your zero-touch provisioning, the box itself doesn't have to have IP address, only the laptop of the person?
No. So the box, the edge itself does need to have internet access to activate. Given, let's say you have a stack and the box is not activated yet, so what we do is in that activation URL, we'll embed that configuration for that static IP. So if you configure a static IP and you say send activation email, the URL itself has that configuration to configure the static IP before connecting out to the orchestrator. Yep. Any other questions? Yep. So today there's no automatic upload of CSV for provisioning, but we do have code samples that make it pretty straightforward as well. Yeah. Any other? Yeah.
If you are talking for an ISP, is there any kind of customer-facing portal?
So the portal I showed you right now is actually multi-tenanted, meaning that you have your own login into that portal and you have access as an ISP to see all your customers. Your customer has their own login and they're limited to seeing only what they are allowed to see. And within each of those logins, there are different levels of access as well. So for example, the customer can have an admin user as well as a read-only user. Likewise, you as the ISP can have an admin user and a read-only user as well. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thanks a lot, guys, and definitely check out those other sessions and get a copy of that book as well. Oh, do the survey.